I'm Matt Lees, and this is a brief video about Hotline Miami 2, Wrong Number. Is it any good? Well, let's find out. But first things first, a very simple disclaimer. I haven't finished this game. In fact, I haven't even really played that much of it. But I've played enough of it to know that, frankly, I really don't like it very much. And now I'm going to explain why. I'll get to specifics in a minute, but really this comes down to a shift in two different things that have changed quite substantially since the first game. And the first of that is a tonal shift in terms of how the game feels tonally, and that's a bunch of stuff. That's music, atmosphere, all this stuff. And secondly, we've got a real shift in terms of the design of the game and how it feels to play as an actual game. And obviously these two things combine to form the experience. That's what a game is. I've just explained what a game is. We'll leave tone to one side for a minute though and just go straight into talking about the design. And I think specifically the root a lot of the problems, well, I think they're problems in Hotline Miami 2 comes down to a real shift in terms of how levels have been designed. And I wager this partly comes down to the fact that Hotline Miami 2 has quite different agendas in terms of what it wants to do as a game. It's something that really does actually want to tell some sort of story this time, even though it's still a bit of a kind of crazy, all over the place, spaced out, warped kind of story. It's more interested in using locations for narrative. And maybe because of that, there's been more emphasis on creating levels to be locations rather than creating levels to be arenas. Either way, the result is a game which has levels which are notably larger. There's a lot more use of very long corridors and use of wide open spaces when you compare it to the first game, which was lots of kind of compartmental rooms. And sure, this might just seem like classic sequel fodder. It's a sequel, so you get more stuff, bigger levels, fun, but it does actually really change the nature of how the game plays. And it's weird because it means you've got this sequel which, when you look at it, looks just like exactly like Hotline Miami in many regards. You just sort of think, well, it looks almost identical, but actually it plays in a remarkably different way. And frankly, one that just isn't nearly as much fun. And yeah, I did check, because frankly, the first thing I thought when playing Hotline Miami 2 was, well, you know, Hotline Miami was a lot of fun when it first came out, but maybe I've misremembered it. Maybe it actually wasn't as good as I thought, and maybe if I, go back. But I went back, and you know what? It's still fucking amazing. It's electrifying. It's immediately hot. You get into it, and it's intense. You get trapped in this loop. You die. You want to keep going. You want to keep pushing. It's thrilling. It gets your heart pumping. Man, it is a masterpiece. But is the sequel? No. It's kind of frustrating, a bit messy, and just doesn't feel like the same kind of game. It's still quite difficult, but when you die, you don't get that kind of fire, you don't get that loop, you don't get that sense of, I've got to beat this, I've got to beat this. Every time I die in Hotline Miami, I immediately just want to play again. I want to keep going, whereas every time I die in Hotline Miami 2, I get a sense of frustration. And this is a really, really simple thing. When I die in a game and I feel frustrated, it's largely because I don't feel like it was entirely my fault. In Hotline Miami, every time I die, it's almost always my fault. I did something stupid. In Hotline Miami 2, I largely get killed because I wasn't looking far enough down the corridor. Corridors, again, I know, but level distance is a really, really big thing here. Mainly because it puts a much larger emphasis on guns, but also because it puts a bigger emphasis on looking. You can hold down on the PC, hold down the shift key so you can look really far away. You could do this in the original game, but in the original game it was more about scoping out the next areas and scoping out positions. In this, it's very much a case of like, you spend a lot of time playing the game looking far away, and it creates a game that feels detached, you don't feel like very much in the heat, in the moment with that character, because you're often not. You're often controlling that character, but shooting guns down long corridors. And again, I went back to the original and checked how guns panned out in the first game, and generally speaking, guns don't pan out very well. You can shoot, sure, and people will run through and you can shoot them all, but generally speaking, lots of people run through quite quickly. Again, because it's smaller levels, you attract the attention, and more people come at a faster rate, and your gun runs out of ammo and you get killed. I mean, that doesn't always happen, but largely, in the original game, guns were used as a bit of a kind of like either a last resort or something you only used when you were sure that you were safe, when you thought, I've killed enough of the enemies in this. They can all run to me, but I can take them all out before my gun runs out of ammo. The sequel, depressingly, I realised quite early on, in many cases, the best thing to do is just to stand around a corner, shoot a gun to get some attention, and then just shoot people one by one as they walk around the corner. And this is not good. I mean, this is a technique I used in the original Commandos, the PC game, and it kind of feels like the game tries to get around this problem, the fact that its best thing to do is just get a gun, stand around a corner, get the attention, shoot everyone, is by changing up the way that masks work. I really felt like I got a decent measure of Hotline Miami 2 when I first played the level, which forced me not to use any lethal weapons, and that means no guns, no knives, etc. That's fine, but it kind of felt like it was getting around the problem that it created by forcing you into a situation where it was the best thing to do was just hang around a corner with a gun, was by then changing the nature of the masks and making restrictions rather than bonuses, making it so that you can't do this in this level. So you can't use guns, so you're going to have to do something different. And I don't know, it just doesn't, I can see what they're trying to do, but it just feels frustrating. It's like, now you have to play this level without the ability to do lots of things. I can appreciate that it's interesting in terms of maybe design and in terms of variety, but in practice, it just isn't much fun to play. These bigger levels with more enemies kind of just end up feeling a little bit haphazard, a little bit too random. And there's less of a case of planning, there's less of a case of learning the map. In the original Hotline Miami, the maps kind of felt like individual puzzles. There were elements of randomization in there. Sometimes, that people would have different weapons, you'd have sometimes people patrolling in different ways, but lots of it was quite static, and it meant that you had to kind of progress through learning how to do it and learning the positions and mastering a kind of puzzle in a way, whereas in the sequel things feel a lot more haphazard and it feels very much more like a twin stick shooter, which is fine. It's a different experience, and I think it would have been a very bad thing if we'd played Hotline Miami 2 and it was exactly like the first game. Well, actually, would it? Because the first game is still really, really fun, and this kind of isn't. And I guess a good way to blur between the mechanics and the tone of the game is probably in terms of the violence. Immediately in Hotline Miami 2, there's a huge amount of violence, and it's kind of like it just desensitizes you to it immediately. But again, going back to the original game, you have these moments of extreme violence, but they're kind of punctuated with smaller amounts of violence. And I mean, it was still hugely violent all the time, but having blood and guts and gore everywhere all the time somehow makes Hotline Miami feel like less violent now. The sequel feels less violent because there's more gore. That might sound crazy, but it's kind of true. One of the things I always remember about Hotline Miami was stuff like, just the little crunch noises and then the pool of blood slowly coming. Somehow that was more horrible than watching somebody's guts be splayed about all over the place. So this turbo violence that you see in the sequel, it isn't a problem. It isn't like something that's distasteful. It just feels like the game as a whole is going out of its way to try and shock you. And it just comes across as being quite brash and crass. And really, if anything, it just makes me slightly reevaluate what the first game was like. Because man, the original was weird. I mean, in the actual levels, you had this huge violent with these pulsating, pounding soundtracks, but in between, it was this kind of like weird jigsaw of stuff that didn't mean anything. Characters, what's going on, what's real, what's not, does it matter? It kind of came across as being incomprehensible, but that was something that I really liked. I like the fact that in the original game, what's going on? I don't know, it doesn't matter. It was kind of trippy and strange, and the soundtrack perfectly kind of amplified this weird sense of ambiguity. But then in the sequel, we've got this knowing, clever, intricate thing of, is it a film? Is it real? Is it a dream? Is it not? And you've got lots more characters and lots more emphasis on character scenes and kind of plot-related scenes, and it just doesn't work. The writing isn't very strong. There are too many characters. None of them are terribly interesting, and yeah, you kind of feel like the original simplicity in terms of this, you're a hitman, you don't know what's going on, this is weird, was fine. But as soon as it steps away from this kind of weird pseudo-stoner gibberish and into a realm of trying to do a clever, intricate plot, it just stumbles, and it stumbles really badly. And I mean, I know a lot of people have really enjoyed it, but it's just not very good. So yeah, well, the original remains this weird, intoxicating, thrilling ride. This just feels like an odd facsimile. It's just not right. It's different. It feels like a very different type of game, and one that just isn't nearly as much fun to play. And with a plot that's so eager to try and trick you and subvert and take you on a strange and mysterious roller coaster, it kind of forgets to actually get you interested in it in the first place. And in all of the ambition and scope of what they were trying to do in terms of expanding it and doing new things, it just feels like everything that was great about the original has sort of shifted away so far that it's just not in view anymore. Having said that, it does have one of the best pause screens, if not the best pause screen in any game ever. That I genuinely love. But in terms of actually playing a game, I'm probably going to go back and just play Hotline Miami. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Goodbye!